Full disclosure, the voice you are listening to now is artificially generated, brought to you by satisphonic.com. See the link in the description for more details. What's the worst financial decision you've seen someone make? I knew someone who got a loan for their wedding, but decided to blow it all at a casino. Now they have a loan for 20 to pay off and nothing to show for it. A friend of mine who is very bad with money and his girlfriend bought some sort of water filtration system from a door-to-door salesman. He has to pay something like $300 a month for this filtration system. He was all stoked because it came with a free set of pots and pans. Fast forward a year, and his girlfriend has broken up with him, moved out of the house, and he's had to sell his home because he can't afford to live there. The water filtration system is now sitting in a storage unit where he still pays $300 a month for it because he's on a 2 or 3 year contract. Sorry, the details are fuzzy.
We have great water quality in my area.
I work for a government agency in building maintenance. We get hit up by water filter and air filter clowns every couple months wanting to sell us some bullshit. We are obligated to sit through their sales pitch, so we aren't biased, but we all know it's bullshit snake oil. The homes and buildings that do need specialized systems like these usually have them installed on day one. We are obligated to sit through their sales pitch, so we aren't biased, but we all know it's biased. Wait, what? So I can grind your job to a complete halt by sending a never-ending stream of salesmen you're forced to listen to. Sometimes the civil service is a strange place. A co-worker I used to have worked every second of overtime he could for several years to save up for a house. When he applied for the house loan, he based his mortgage payment on all of the overtime he had been working. I tried to tell him that wasn't a good idea, but he didn't want to hear it. He ended up divorced a few years later because his wife got tired of him always working. When my wife and I bought our house, we based it off of just my income. So if she lost her job or I lost mine, we would be fine. Everyone told us we should get a super nice house with our income, since we could afford it. 2 years later, my wife lost her job, and now we have nothing to worry about. No added stress. It was the best decision we have made. That is a great idea and something I never considered for some reason. Thanks. Fry me your poo. This is one reason I did not want to be house poor when I bought mine and held out for something on a short sale. It was a hell of a process, but now I pay 14 what most people pay on a mortgage in my area, all because I was willing to undertake an annoying process. I looked up what a short sale is and it was so tedious. I lost all memory of the definition. A guy in my fraternity got 30 for an undisclosed reason. I'm guessing a family death or something, and he bet it all on the Yankees winning one game. They lost. A guy who lived on my floor in the dorms inherited $100 from his grandfather's estate. He was suddenly very popular, buying all the beer, pizza, new car, golf clubs, etc. He was living large. His parents showed up about a month later to attempt to help straighten him out and recover funds. The golf clubs and other items went to a pawn shop, and they even enlisted the Raw to help watch out for the guy. Terrible for an 18, 19-year-old to come into that kind of money out of nowhere with no reference or respect for how to handle it or how it was earned. It's good that they intervened before he blew it all. Yeah, that's a good financial decision by the parents right there. I met a guy in college at a party like this, was bragging about how much of his inheritance from his grandma he had spent on drugs in the past 2 years was on the order of tens of thousands. A dude who owned a small convenience store in our town spent like $20,000 on fidget spinners. He was posting for like a year begging people to buy them as he would lose his business and his marriage was falling apart due to it. Why in the world would he need that many fidget spinners? They were exceptionally popular, and I suppose he thought he could make a mint during the fad. I guess he got a break buying in bulk, but geez, so many people thought they could get rich with a fidget spinner fad. The market got oversaturated. Everyone that wanted one already had one. At one point, I saw a line of people at the mall lining up to buy light-up fidget spinners for $35. My maternal grandmother bought an 8-plex to avoid capital gains when she sold her large house. The apartment complex was in the red and needed a lot of repairs. She hired my father to do them and be on site manager. The place started making money. My mom, divorced from my dad, was mad that my grandma bought it in the first place, then hired my dad, then was proved wrong because it was making money. My grandma was in her 90s, and my mom pressured her for years, so my grandma finally sold it. That place is in a high market area and is now worth millions. My mom made a poor financial decision based on petty spite, almost as if financial decisions shouldn't be made based on who hates who. My supervisor took out a loan against their $400 to pay their rent because their credit cards were maxed. 2 weeks later, they bought a brand new '60 Lincoln with basically nothing down because her daughter just had a baby and I need a bigger car for that. I sat down with a guy to help him figure things out. He had a fair amount of credit card debt, but nothing impossible. Just by consolidating it on a new card with 0% interest for even a year, it had seen amazing progress. Seemed like he had taken my advice. Next I saw him, it turned out he paid it off using his $400 on ran up credit card debt, requiring bankruptcy. Once they were able to build credit again, 7 years later, they proceeded to run up a massive amount of debt again, but couldn't go bankrupt again, so they used debt consolidation. The debt didn't come from sudden expenses. They just needed to buy things to feel better. You have to respect someone's dedication to bad choices to wait 7 years and run it right back. Had a co-worker with 5 kids who could all go to Ask for free once he has worked there for 15 years, even if he quit. He quit at 14.5 years for a job that barely paid more than he made at us. Cost all 5 kids a free education at a top school since he couldn't wait 6 more months. Generational bag fumble. Is that all there is to the story? My ex's stepdad left Boeing right before he would earn a considerable pension, but it turns out he didn't leave. He was fired for carrying on an 11-year-long affair with another co-worker who worked in a different part of the country on the company's dime and communicating using company email. He did that on purpose, either consciously or subconsciously. My mother is also a saboteur when it comes to her children and did something similar to my sister and I. Put everything in his GF's name to hide assets as he owed the ears. The GF sold his business, cashed out his accounts, and ran. Myso's father did this, sold his business to an employee for $1 to hide it during his divorce, and was shocked when suddenly the guy didn't magically give it back. He lost his entire business and inventory for $1. He was an abusive asshole, so couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. That's worse than my dad, who claimed his business was non-profitable in the divorce. The lie fell apart pretty quickly as the company accountants were managed by my mum's brother, who turned up to the court hearing. Does that even work? Even if the person you sold your business to doesn't screw you over, I can't imagine the court just accepts that you sold your business for $1. Here in Ontario, if you sell a car, you have to pay the taxes on what it's worth, not what is claimed on the bill of sale. I imagine such laws exist elsewhere. It only works if the other party has bad lawyers or you aren't going against a government agency. If you try to pull that off against the IRS or bankruptcy courts, they will unwind that transaction and make the other person give back the asset. You will then end up with one very, very pissed off judge who will rake you over the coals. My co-worker has 20 FIVEC in anime figurines. He is in mega debt right now. A manga debt fight. My brother's ex fell for a Craigslist scam. She found a motorcycle and the guy needed money up front to pay bills before she even saw it. We told her, don't do it, it's a scam. She said she already sent $1,000. Of course, he was never available to show her the bike, and we found out from my brother, after they broke up, she actually continued sending him money in hopes of getting the motorcycle. I think she was out $3,000 by the end. My ex-husband got cheated out of tens of thousands of dollars just by being an over-trusting and underthinking seller. He had always wanted a piano his entire life, and one day a friend's father had passed and left them an incredibly amazing and very old piano that she had no use for, so gifted to him. He loved that thing so much, tuned it and fixed it up. Then a giant ball of tragedies struck that put us in very bad financial situation, causing us to no longer afford where we were currently living and having to move to his family's old home, which is off the mainland and on an island. Being that the only way to get anything moved was by ship and extremely expensive, he had to sell a lot of things. And much to his dismay, the piano was just too big and too heavy to afford to ship there. So he put out a listing to sell it for a very reasonable price. It was an antique in spectacular condition, made in the early 1900s, and was worth, at the very least, $80,000. He listed it for a fraction of what it was worth due to time constraint on having to get rid of it before the move. Someone contacted him and offered to buy it. And here is where he did something monumentally stupid. The buyer offered to have a truck come and pick up the piano in a very quick time frame and asked if it would be all right to give my husband $1,000 up front and then the rest in 2 weeks when they got paid. I know he was under a lot of stress, but damn, that was dumb. You do not let anyone walk away with an incredibly valuable item without it being paid in full. As I'm sure no one here is shocked by, the person never paid anything else on the piano and just disappeared. The money from that sale alone was pretty much all we were going to have to live off of until he was able to secure a new job in the new location. Scammers are truly awful, and many people need to learn not to be so trusting. It's sad, but it's just how it is. That seems like it is getting to be a large enough theft to warrant an investigation into who that was and his information from whatever social media that happened on. Did the police not do anything? I know they would normally basically ignore car theft, etc., but this seems like there should have been a trail to work from. The store I used to work at had a Western Union kiosk. We had to discourage so many people from sending money to people they didn't know. My friend bought a used Hellcat Challenger yesterday at 10.5% APR and $380 no insurance. He lives in my other friend's spare room. Time to move in the car. My roommate buys DoorDash almost every day. They'll maybe cook for themselves once or twice a week, but other than that they order food in 5-6 times a week. I know how much they make, and I have not a clue how they can afford that. My roommate buys DoorDash almost every day. He would save a fortune just by going down, ordering and taking home the food. The markup that those delivery companies charge is ridiculous. For example, to buy McDonald's via UberEats is around $110 for my family of 5. Buying the same food at McDonald's in person costs around $60. And as an added bonus, when you go down yourself, you are guaranteed to get what you ordered when it is still hot. Oh, for sure, picking it up still saves money. But here's what I don't get. They will come home from work and 10 minutes later, I'll hear her go and get her food from the driver. Like you, could have picked it up on the way home, but didn't. Don't get me wrong, she's a great roommate and friend, but some of the stuff she does just has me scratching my head. My former sister-in-law had a thriving medical practice. She got so stressed that she joined the Scientologist and started taking their classes. She opened up 5-6 credit cards without telling my brother, maxed the cards out with hundreds of thousands in cash withdrawals, and gave it to that cult. Yeah, but did she rid herself of her harmful body thetans? Edit, I fix the spelling of the invented magical beings to align with the great L. Ron Hubbard's true intention. The last thing I want to do is engage her in conversation on the subject. First, the entire notion drives me crazy. Second, I don't have a good poker face. A woman of science falling big for a very unscientific Scientology cult. That organization is evil. It's a lesson that all of us have vulnerabilities. Intelligence is not an automatic safeguard. Helps for sure, but not a preventative, and we shouldn't assume it can't happen to us for X reason. Worked with a 50-year-old guy who looked like the arse end of a rhino and hated anyone not from England who sent peace stank to his fiancée in Thailand he'd never met for a boob job, clothes and flight over. Oddly enough, her naked pics and promises of anal when she visited stopped once the money had been sent. We had to talk to one of our employees a couple of weeks ago about something like this. He's not the best looking or most intelligent guy, but he's a nice guy. Apparently, he met a girl online who lives in Atlanta. We saw her Facebook page, and you could tell something was fishy. She was this smoking hot blonde with only like 4 pictures, all in skimpy tops and lingerie. No other posts on her page, just pictures. She told him she was single and had no family. They had all passed away. He decided a week after meeting her that he was gonna quit his job and move to Atlanta to live with her and help her rent an apartment. Us fellow employees and his family kept telling him it was a scam or catfish and not to go through with it. He got pissed and apparently had suicidal thoughts and checked himself into a mental hospital for a couple of days, but eventually he agreed and didn't go through with it. Yikes. There's this older guy I used to work with who had these scammers all over him on Facebook. I don't know if they are all connected, but somehow all of these obvious fake profiles found him and added him. These are all profiles showing very attractive young women in skimpy clothing that was obviously just ripped from Google, and he will carry on full conversations with them in the comment section on his picture. Talking about their day, saying that she will be visiting his area soon and would love to meet with him. He's so handsome and funny, and I feel really bad for him because he's an older single on attractive dude with no social skills, and he's being led to believe that all these women want him. If I was closer to him, I would have sent him a message telling him that all his profiles are fake. My very large, very introverted friend from high school met a girl from the Philippines on Occupid years ago. He was super hesitant to tell people because he knew what they would think. When he told me, I was super happy for him, but he absolutely under no circumstances should send her money. Flowers, small gifts, etc. Absolutely, but never just straight cash. They've been together for over 5 years now, and he even went to the Philippines a few times for work and for fun. He's met her family. He spent weeks with her. Somehow, amazingly, he found love thousands of miles away. She would be here now if they could get her visa approved, but that has been a major problem for a while now. My awful aunt was the trustee for my grandparents' estate. When they passed, she decided to sell their house to a random realtor who put a leaflet on the door. To the realtor, not with the realtor. It wasn't put on the market, and the aunt rejected a matching offer by me after I argued hard to actually list the house and have people bid on it. The realtor slapped a new coat of paint on it and sold it a couple of months later for literally $1 million more than she bought it for. I annul, but she breached her fiduciary duty, and you could have taken her to court for it. Edit, the aunt, not the realtor. I'm so extremely sorry for you, and pissed off. I too had a cunt aunt. My aunt gambled her $80 inheritance from grandma. Later, she tried to take all the inheritance that was meant to be divided amongst the 4 remaining siblings when her sister died, even going to my mum to get her to sign her share, over which mum did part cause of elderly, part cause of elderly, part because she didn't want the money, not caring that she had kids. Struggling herself. I'm thankful my sister heard about it and reminded her that at least 2 of her sons and 9 of her daughters were near destitute, and that I had a massive uni debt I needed help paying off. My mum decided to sign away her share of the superannuation, bitten at the bank account balance. My aunt was pissed she didn't get it all and had disowned everyone in the family. She's a narc and only obsessed with the veneer of money. Really pathetic. And neither time she had claimed grandma's antique singer sewing machine as her inheritance, thinking it was worth thousands. Later, when she found out it was only worth about $50, she threw it in the skip bin. My dad fished it out for me, but my sister claimed it, which is more than fine. My sister restored it and displayed it in her house. A couple years later, my aunt visited and saw the sewing machine and went on a tirade that it should have gone to a daughter, not a granddaughter, despite my dad literally pulling it out of the skip bin my aunt had thrown it in. I'm glad Dad had secretly grabbed a blanket that belonged to Grandma as a kid, had an older German fairy tale stitched on it, and gave it to me before my aunt learned of it, and threw it out too. My sister has also claimed that the applied for a 5-egg loan, didn't accept quick enough, so applied for another 5-egg loan. Both got accepted and ended up gambling it all. Okay, but did they win, is the real question. Nothing, tank debt now low. Oh, but you are forgetting the interest. So, it's what, at least 14? Now just apply for a tank loan. Problem solved. A guy I dated for a short time had been joining a Melm scheme selling insurances. I listened to his monologue and told him I had no money. He was furious and tried to sell insurance to our waiter at the restaurant. He failed again. I'm still laughing today. He was no good guy. Him, Herm, my date, can't afford my pitch. Who are notoriously rich. People who get sucked into mums are so unbearable. I tell them up front, it's a bad idea. Get out and don't expect a single sale from me. I will not perpetuate that scam, but we are still friends otherwise. Usually works out fine, but one time one woman friend invited us to dinner without telling us it was a Melm pitch. We find out after we almost finish eating, and I say bluntly, no, I told you not to do this. There and her other friends. Retort was, why did you eat the food then? You lied to us, you nincompoops. You're just mad. I feel absolutely no shame or anxiety saying no. Look. Many decisions around new tattoos or dogs when they can't pay rent regularly. My aunt says the rich get richer and the poor get another dog. I find this to be true for some of my family. I bought a Hellcat when my old baddest Challenger was paid off. Thank you for your service. Literally, my first thought as well, My cousin spent 100% of her inheritance and took out a line on her home to buy a second home in the mountains. Thing is, it was being pushed over by a mountain, and they thought they could fix it. I went and seen it, and every door jamb was crooked and the doors wouldn't shut. They took me down into the basement, and they were trying to use I-beams to stop the mountain from pushing on the home. I was just like, what the hell are you doing? That won't solve anything. Fast forward 6 months, and they asked me for 50 to help, and I declined. Fast forward a year, and the home collapsed, and now they owe over 300K for a home that doesn't exist, and if they don't make the payments, they lose their other house too, because they used the original home as collateral and could not get insurance on the second home. Total money lost upwards of 700K. This bothers me so much. I trust no deal and no one. I need to make sure everything is on order, and this just goes up my spine. Whoever sold that to them dodges a bullet and found a sucker. It probably was a great deal, and there probably is an engineering solution for this. Mountains don't just walk around. There was a retaining wall that could be built to solve this. But the kind of person to make those financial decisions is not the kind of purpose to do the research or pay the money to do it right. I would love to see a picture of exactly what was going on with the capital. Dumb people getting inheritances. Meanwhile, all of my grandparents were dirt broke, and I had to earn everything I have. Is just life, I guess, low. I won't name any names, but a good friend who literally had it all. The high-rise apartment and a house down the street with a pool, sauna, casita, Hummer, Corvettes, a successful business, and about $400,000 in Bitcoin. Threw it all away over a murder for hire because him and his non-rated too. Any of the above successes, but from something about 10 years earlier before I knew him. Got greedy and no longer wanted to split their financial gain with a third person, so hired someone on the dark web to carry out the crime across state lines, but communicated everything over text. All three men, my friend, his business partner, and guy they hired, have been caught and convicted. One received life in prison, and my friend and his business partner are up for the death penalty. Also, he was only 35 when he was originally arrested. Knew someone who answered those scam emails thinking they would get rich. Last I heard, he lost around $50 key, emptied out savings account and maxed out credit cards, left in debt and had to move back with ailing parent. Not close to them at all, but more like a friend of a friend of a friend's cousin. Motherfucker just would not listen. Genuinely thought he was going to be a millionaire. They kept stringing him along until the bitter end, and then, poff. Biggest concern his friends had was him trying to milk his ailing parents for their last nickel and dime. Fortunately, he wised up and knew he'd been had. The last I heard of him was he had an hourly job somewhere and trying to get out of debt. This is why everyone should have played RuneScape in 2007. Get scammed for your virtual currency, folks, and learn your lesson. Extravagant weddings that end in divorce a year later. My brother and his wife were in massive debt, didn't work high-paying jobs, and could no longer afford their 2-bedroom apartment while trying to pay off the debt. They moved back home, into our parents' basement. A week before they moved in, they built a computer, and a year after that, they consciously decided to try to get pregnant, which they did, while still living in the basement and knowing they haven't improved their financial state whatsoever. Your poor parents. Now they won't be able to kick them about because of the kid. Oh, don't worry. My parents had a brilliant idea to sell their house and move into my sister's house. They paid off all their debt, their car, plus all the expenses of getting them new furniture first, and last month's rent. Pretty sure they are back in some sort of debt now, and from what I was told, my sister-in-law never even said thank you. They won thousands of dollars and bought a new entertainment system instead of getting current on their mortgage. Foreclosed on later that year. The thing was, the area had recently become the new-it area for young families, and housing prices had skyrocketed. They easily could have just sold the house, paid cash for a larger house 20 minutes up the road, and still had tens of thousands left over. Cashed in their 400 on to have a cocaine party. How was it? Basically, everyone just came over and stole his cocaine, and many of his belongings. He then had to move back home with his mom shortly thereafter, so probably not great for him. Well, that sounds awful. As crazy as it sounds, announcing all over your university campus that you were buying 20 worth of cocaine for a party at your place, and everyone is invited, was not a great idea. This older lady worked part-time in my kitchen. It was a fine dining, fast-paced environment. She would only work about 20 hours per week doing busy work, peeling vegetables, washing produce, etc. Tasks I knew she could handle and wouldn't get overwhelmed. Unfortunately, her husband passed away, and she requested a few months off. I totally understood and said, take all the time you need. Let me know when you feel comfortable coming back to work, if at all. Take care, Barbara. 8 months later, she contacted me for a job. I was more than willing to have her back in my kitchen. I nonchalantly asked her how she was coping with her loss. She broke down in tears. She apparently got a $500,000 insurance payout from her husband's death. Within those months, she attempted to open a restaurant and sink every dime into the establishment. It went out of business in 6 months. She was now broke as an elderly lady having to go back to work. They got married to someone heavily in debt. The person kept their financial situation from them until after they were married. My ex-husband did that to me. He concealed about $12,000 of credit card debt from me. When I found out about it, he said he ran it up buying Taco Bell after work every night. We lived in different countries for the first year of our marriage since I wasn't born in the US, so I was going in rather blind in hindsight. Turned out it wasn't just Taco Bell, but also commissioning people online for My Little Pony pornography. Hundreds of dollars, lol, edit. Also just remembered he blew hundreds on extra lives for Candy Crush as well, and only stopped when he saw a South Park episode making fun of freemium games. It culminated in him getting a loan for $12,000 from his father. His father is an attorney, so naturally he drew up a loan agreement for my ex to sign. What I didn't know was his father also added a line for my signature, and my ex forged it. I found that out when he randomly mentioned it to me a week or so later, and I am sure to this day he still believes that's perfectly okay and very legal. And cool, I guess. He sent it back to the wrong address. So his father never got it. I texted his father ahead of time and let him know the signature was forged anyway. So no harm done there. I get wanting help with debt, especially since I'm good at saving money. Just don't steal it from me. Ask. I'm happy to help a partner with that where I can. I'd already paid off an auto loan for him in the past, so I guess he just assumed he could help himself to my money. And you knew we were married. I understand the concept of communal property, but I had that money prior to the marriage, and he forged my signature. It was the beginning of the end, really. My trust in him vanished completely. People told me I'd wind up with half his debt and half my savings gone if we divorced. I got lucky though. He got a very high-paying job, 6 figures, right before I left and paid all his debt off. We agreed to leave with what we came in with, savings and retirement intact for us both. Leaving with most of your savings and dignity intact seems like a best-case scenario for marrying a brony. I knew a guy who was terrible with money. Worked in a warehouse but spent all his money on drugs and things for his controlling girlfriend. Then one day he came to me to show me his brand new car. Probably around $40, $50. He takes me for a ride and starts bragging about how he took his pay stub to like 10 of those cash advance places and get $10 worth of loans and had been living like a king. It was as if he thought he found some sort of life hack. To this day, I'm not sure if he just thought he wouldn't have to pay it back or what. A couple weeks later, I learned he wasn't paying attention while driving and rear-ended a bus going way over the speed limit and totaled the car. Train wreck of a guy. My dad had his own company, and someone told him it made financial sense that instead of paying himself wages, he should take out a loan from his company. He built up debt for 3 years while working full-time rather than paying himself. It had all sorts of bad tax effects, like he was required to pay interest on this, which was then taxed as profit of the company. Then he paid himself again, paying income taxes. It took him about 10 years to get out of that hole. Then he needed to sell his house because it was too expensive. But the buyer got cold feet on the last day before the sale. Rather than having the buyer pay 10% of the price to get out of the sale, he gave him an extension without an end date. The buyer then took 2 years to think about whether he wanted the house. All the while, my parents needed to keep paying the mortgage and couldn't sell the house to anyone else because of the contract they had with that guy. Brought them close to bankruptcy. I've personally paid a couple of $100 a month to let them pay for the mortgage during that time. If I learned anything from the internet, is that you never want to be the nice guy when your life depends on it. I've seen people turn down raises because they didn't understand how taxes work. 21 year, living in dad's basement paycheck to paycheck, went to a reptile exhibit and brought home 2 exotic frogs and a snake because they didn't have enough money for a bearded dragon.